Welcome, everyone. I am Nicole Grovagna. I am joined with my co-host, Yubi Seminieri, and our guest for today is Helen Young-Hayes. Welcome, Helen.
Thanks, Nicole. Hi,
Helen. So she is the founder and CEO of Activate Workforce Solutions. She was previously an investment fund manager she was running Janus Worldwide and overseas funds, and she retired a bit ago. And so most recently, she's the author and executive sponsor of Colorado Inclusive Economy. And we hope to hear about a lot of that today. Thanks for being with us today, Helen.
Thanks for inviting me. It's good to be here.
So let's talk about first off, Colorado Occlusive Economy. I love the initiative and the effort, and it started about a year ago. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit like the impetus of that and why it's so important right now?
Right. Well, I was imprisoned by the pandemic, as we all were, in mid-March, quite unexpectedly. And I found myself with the luxury of thinking some very deep thoughts about this global pandemic, about this once in a century experience that we were all trying to live through. And I had the time to look at some of the prior business cycles, like the Great Recession and other business cycles, and see what happens to lower income individuals during these incredible boom and bust scenarios. And so I realized in March that this pandemic would negatively impact lower income populations first, fastest, and that they would recover slowest, if at all. And so I found myself wanting us not to rush back to business as usual, because business as usual doesn't work for everyone. And too many people get left behind during times of prosperity. An interesting fact is that Colorado is the 8th most prosperous economy in the nation. And yet we rank 37th with respect to racial inclusion in our economy. And so the prosperity, for the last decade, we've had the hottest economy in the nation. That prosperity has not been shared by all people equally, and certainly not by people of color. And so,
can I ask you a question on that? Do you think that's more to do with the fact that we just aren't a very diverse population or state? Or where do you think that's coming from? I mean, do you think that's more related to like these, systemic inequalities and oppression and those types of conversations that we've all been having these last few months?
Well, when you adjust for the demographic of our state, we are not a very inclusive economy. And so despite the fact that we only have about 33% of our population, 34% of our population is people of color, we are not diverse for the people of color that we have. And I actually think that the fundamental and beginning inequity really starts in school. K-12 educational attainment rates are less than half the rates of educational attainment rates for our Latino and our Black population are less than half of what they are for our white population. And so already there you can see the beginning of great inequity that will play itself out in employment and income and in wealth creation, because there's a tremendous correlation between high school graduation and a certain income level, and then a 4-year college degree and a much higher income level on average, et cetera. And so educational attainment really is, in my opinion, the first inequity that arises in Colorado, in our community.
Then let's back up for, sorry, I have to finish that thought.
Well, then I was just going to say that then that inequity is played out by not only lower skill jobs that require less educational attainment are available to communities of color. But then on top of it, then you can look at systems that are in place that are less inclusive and that perpetuate inequity. And so, the inequity begins basically even in preschool, when lower income communities, especially the BIPOC community, has less access to full-time preschool.
To see all of this information, and I'm sure that you have quite a bit of these data crossing your desk on a daily basis because of your roles with Colorado Inclusive Economy and Activate Workforce Solutions. So can you talk a little bit about Activate Workforce Solutions to give our listeners some context for how it is that you're so close to the challenges that go on in low-wage earner communities?
So I'm the founder and CEO of Activate Workforce Solutions. We are a people-centered recruiter and professional coach of talent coming from lower income communities. And you could sum it all up with what they have in common is a strong will to work. But we're looking for individuals who have demonstrated work ethic, initiative, follow through, and coachability, regardless of educational attainment, regardless of professional experience. We're looking for a strong will to work. And when we find individuals who are strongly motivated to become economically self-sufficient and then economically mobile, we connect them with full-time, full benefit careers with our employer partners. And so we are recruiters in that we help our employer partners find extraordinary talent from communities that they're not normally hiring from, that their normal HR practices don't even touch. And then we, importantly though, after we connect them with full-time, full benefit careers, not jobs, careers. And upon placement, we're tripling their incomes. And so you can imagine what I call an economic mismatch. We have talent that has been undervalued in the workplace. We have talent that's been overlooked in the workplace through the normal hiring practices of companies. And so we're bringing this talent to our employers. They're extremely humble, hungry, and smart. And then we're activating them by connecting them with these full-time, full benefit careers. And so we're taking individuals who, on average, were making less than $13,000 a year before we place them. And last year, we placed them into $44,000 a year careers, plus benefits on top of that. So you can see we're tripling people's incomes, but that is not the end of the story. Our real work actually begins when we connect someone with their new opportunity, because we're also professional coaches. We walk alongside each client for 12 months after they get their new opportunity to equip them with the life, professional, and personal financial skills that are really necessary to become economically mobile and professionally mobile as well.
Is that in coordination with the employer partners, that 12-month period? So is there kind of a, have you sat down with them and said, here's our curriculum. Is there anything that you want to add into that? And we can create kind of a partnered, supportive, year-long coaching structure for these people. Is that in coordination with them?
So, most of our employers tell us that we can teach our employees what they need to do when they're on the job, but we can't necessarily teach them how to go about doing their jobs.
Sure.
And so what we do is we really supplement the training that goes on at our employers with those essential business skills that that really help propel an individual to, one, be successfully retained by their employer, and two, be an engaged employee, and three, be a value-added employee. And so we call our coaching services really retention services for our employer, because the whole name of the game is to have an engaged, retained, value-added employee, and our coaching really helps deliver that. And so we for the most part, don't teach those skills that an employer can teach. We teach those skills that an employer wishes they could teach, but they don't have the time or the structure or the relationship to teach them. And so examples of that would be life skills like conflict management, like stress reduction, which of course for us was a huge part of our coaching focus during the pandemic, anger management skills, healthy boundaries in relationships, because let's face it, if things aren't healthy at home, they're going to spill over into and affect your work life. We also coach to professional skills like what does initiative look like in this new role that you have? Let's talk about how we can demonstrate work ethic. How do you go about asking for more training and more upskilling so that you can become professionally mobile and demonstrate that initiative? And so these are some of the types of topics that we will coach. We customize our coaching to each individual. So whether we're working with a young adult who has just gotten a GED instead of graduating from high school, who's experienced generational poverty, we'll coach that young man or woman to a different type of a curriculum than we will an immigrant, like one of our recent clients who was a practicing lawyer in Senegal, who got an MBA recently and also got a project management professional certificate. And so we cover a really broad, diverse spectrum of individuals, and our coaching is designed to help each individual achieve his or her fullest potential.
I'm wondering if during the pandemic there was so much shift to online, and there's a lot of resources that are required for that. I mean, even with all of our fancy technological equipment, Yubi and I still have to sometimes turn away a guest to say, sorry, our internet is just not working today. We'll have to do this a different day. And so I'm wondering then, how do you handle that with low wage clients, your low wage clients that are, they may have all of these personal qualities and the ability to really bring their whole selves, even without having had the benefit of years of wonderful preparation. Now they're diving into this new role. Their income is 3 times what it was last year, last month, and now technology is standing in the way. How did you handle that?
Well, one, we pivoted as an organization. And so previously our recruiting and our coaching was all done face-to-face. And we really believed that was the only solution until the pandemic forced us to move everything online. And so I'd say that that we shifted as a team very quickly. And even our coaching relationships, where the name of the game is build a trusting relationship between coach and coachee, so that you can be really supportive. And we were able to transfer those activities to a digital setting, a remote setting online, with very little loss of sort of relationship building, which was really surprising and gratifying. But the technology shifts in the US that have been rapidly accelerated by the pandemic have done two things really. One, given us many more people who need help in achieving economic self-sufficiency. I mean, so many people are really struggling to regain employment and certainly lost income as a result of the pandemic. But secondly, it's created a massive shift in the demand for talent and the types of talent and skills that are being called upon. And so, whereas before we might have been looking at, automation, automating away tens of millions of jobs over the next 20 or 30 years, now we have 7 million workers who've been displaced, whose jobs are not coming back. And this all happened in a span of 7 months. So the pressing need for digital skills and digital relevance is an urgent need in our nation. It's an urgent need in Colorado, and we are responding to that one by we had to get really creative with our coaching. So we constantly pivoted last year, but coaching around, okay, so now we need to teach you how to find the closest Wi-Fi hotspot if we can't get you, if your employer can't provide a reliable internet. Well, that's difficult in a pandemic because Wi-Fi hotspots, most coffee shops were closed, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you create a safe space, a soundproof space in your one bedroom apartment if you've got 3 young children at home that now you are the principal for and you're also the teacher of? And so we had to get really creative around problem solving and troubleshooting. And I'd say that our coaches were really, we added so many different types of coaching strategies last year than we had before, because people were dealing with things that none of us had ever anticipated would be an issue. So let's use an example of someone we had placed, full-fledged accountant. Previously, she had been underemployed, working part-time at the Amazon warehouse, incredibly gifted individual with a master's degree in information systems. So you can imagine this incredibly talented immigrant, single mom with 2 very young children. We placed her during the pandemic. She's suddenly making 5 times her prior salary. And yet she has to deal with, okay, her training is not in person anymore, so she doesn't really know her team. This is the US business culture. This is not the culture from the Sudan where you're accustomed to. And helping you interpret what your boss is saying when you haven't even seen your boss face to face and never met her. And then how you deal with how are you going to work a 50-hour work week and be the full-time caregiver of your children when there is no quality childcare available during the pandemic. So those are the types of things that we were trying to solve for last year.
Geez, Helen, it sounds like everyone could have benefited from that.
I was going to say, I have friends who absolutely would have been like, yes, can you please help me organize my entire week?
Pandemic training, please. Yes, thank you.
Pandemic training. That's it. Oh, that's incredible. Well, and so you were talking about the tech part of it. What's interesting is even before the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion around digital skills and coding that almost everyone should have, right? It almost becomes like a baseline, and what that translates to in work is everyone is a coder, so that's like one career, and then they take that and kind of pathway to another career. You end up having 5 different careers in your lifetime. I think that's what people are talking about as far as the future of talent. So that's really interesting for what you all are doing, because I think you're addressing that specifically, right? With Activate IT is you're saying, yes, let's start with this. It's almost going to be a baseline requirement for everybody moving forward, right?
Right. So last year in May, in the middle of the pandemic, we launched Activate IT powered by Perscolis. Our partner, Perscolis, is a national nonprofit IT training institute that has trained and placed over 13,000 individuals from underserved communities into over 500 employers in 17 cities. And we were their 14th city launch and their only external partnership.
Got it.
So our goal is to provide tuition-free technology skill training to our underserved communities and equip them to be relevant and prosperous and thriving in the 21st century. And so I believe firmly that Activate IT and Perscolis are among the most elegant solutions for inequity and poverty that I have seen in America today. And why is that? One, because we have a 1 million person IT talent shortage in the US. Last year, our nation produced only 111,000 computer science graduates.
Yep.
And so you can see with that million-person talent gap, and then a rapidly automating, digitizing economy. So many of us now working from home, so many of us now able to work anywhere globally. And so these digital skills are becoming ever more in demand, and yet we have a very, very limited talent pool. And so, one, we have this acute talent shortage in IT. Secondly, four-year STEM degrees are just typically not available to people of color. Specifically, the BIPOC community is very underrepresented in four-year college attainment, much less four-year STEM degrees. And so we have very little diversity of that talent pipeline in technology. Most of the technology industry has been trying to crack the code to diversity for at least 10 years. Some have spent and pledged tens of millions of dollars to diversify their workforces with very, very little success. And that's because they're all sort of fishing from a limited pool. And I believe that the answer is build your own talent from an untapped talent pool. And so helping the industry achieve more diversity and inclusion for communities that normally don't access these 21st century skills, meeting a talent shortage that is acute globally as well as in the US, and doing this in a tuition-free way. And so the pandemic has greatly increased the need for digital literacy, and not just literacy, not just the ability to search the internet, not just the ability to set up an email account, but actual skills like software development, et cetera. And so we are part of, I believe that we're part of that, part of meeting the shift that is the future of the American workforce in a way that will provide our community with the benefit of activating individuals who really need opportunities other than these low wage, low skill service sector jobs that are not coming back.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's really fascinating is in this post-pandemic world, I mean, a career like that is very well suited to being able to work from home, take care of kids if that's part of the situation, and sort of have that flexibility in this new normal. I mean, I think it's brilliant. I think you're exactly spot on. Like, that is the future. I mean, 100,000, 900,000 gap. I mean, that's insane. Like, and then you break that down into areas like cybersecurity, for example, where it's even crazier numbers.
Interestingly, the technology employers, and every company has a technology department and has a technology need. So it's not just
Yeah.
IT companies, but every company has a growing need
Mm-hmm.
for tech talent, and that pretty much just that demand for tech talent was unabated during the pandemic. But during the pandemic, it was, really, really revealed who can apply for jobs and who cannot. And so, if in Colorado alone, over 2/3 of the jobs that pay a living wage require digital literacy and digital talents and skilling up, and 2/3 of our population doesn't have those basic skills, you can see how rapidly we're going to create this complete imbalance where we have people whose livelihoods are not coming back, who don't possess the skills to be productive in the 21st century. And so in our first 5 years, we're going to train and place over 500 individuals, and it could be more based upon the demand from local employers. One employer was telling me recently that for every qualified technology candidate in Colorado, for every one, there are 3 job openings, 3. And so we almost can't scale Activate IT quickly enough to.
No. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I was
tough.
just talking with someone who was hiring, and they were so happy with the 9 candidates they got for a coding job, and they were like, "Man, we thought we would never get this many candidates." And we're like, "9 candidates? That's not very many candidates." But yeah, that's the world we're living in right now.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and then sort of the interesting way that the technology industry has solved for that problem is that they all poach from one another, and so they're trying to poach someone from their neighbors across the street at a 5 or 10% wage premium. And so there's been huge wage inflation
Mhm.
in the technology industry, and yet I still think that the solution is grow our own talent. Just grow our own talent.
Well, and I would add to that, I think putting the responsibility onto the companies now. I mean, it's we've talked a lot about this game that we're forcing candidates to play, right? Because because companies haven't really done the work of understanding who they need, and and the personality traits and the ability and the growth potential that they're looking for every role. And so it sort of lands on the candidates just to play this game, just to even get noticed.
Mhm.
And to me, that's a big part of the future of work too. And I don't know how much you work directly with your employers to help them or to understand what they're looking for, but I feel like it's got to shift because the talent is there, right? Your
Right.
point, you're working with a pool of talent that exists, that is there. It's not that there's no talent, and it's not that we're fighting each other for the best candidates. That's an excuse, in my opinion. That you have to tap into these underrepresented pools.
Right. And so, interesting fact about IT: 40% of the roles in IT do not require a college degree. An
Hmm.
industry certificate from a boot camp like ours is, is a perfect proxy. And I actually think
Mm-hmm.
that number, 40%, is going to go up and up and up as
Yeah.
more employers realize, hey, I don't need to hire a comp sci grad. I can hire someone
Mm-hmm.
who's got an A plus and network plus credential, and then a
Mm-hmm.
cybersecurity credential on top of that, and just sort of bypass that whole 4 year college degree requirement. And so we are having conversations with employers who are tired of fighting with their neighbors across the street for the very limited talent pool. And so we're helping them think more strategically and long term about, okay, I don't just need a butt in a seat
Mm-hmm.
next week, but I need to think about this over the next 10 years, because this is going to be a limiting factor to my competitive ability and my profitability if I am starved for technology within the company. And so, so we are developing a talent pipeline of the future for technology companies and other companies as well.
It sounds like kind of what you're getting at, UB, is that there is something that the employer is doing, quote unquote, wrong, that they could change to solve their own problem and to
Mm-hmm.
solve the problems for the workforce. And what I'm seeing is happening: the employer is putting a premium on coding or technology jobs, and a bunch of money is or going to a single individual who then leaves and goes to another company to make 10% more.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if that money were taken and put into some fairly quick training, you could have a much larger workforce that probably sits tight because they didn't have that kind of income before, and now they're perfectly happy to live out this sort of lifestyle with this new career.
Mhm. Yeah, well, it's almost just a matter of supply and demand, right? If you increase the supply, then the pricing is the unit pricing is going to go down just because you have more. And also, our partner Perscolis has been doing this for 25 years, and so scaled and replicated, and their studies show that their talents stay longer, they're more loyal, they're more engaged,
Mm-hmm.
they really want to be there, and so they're not just a mercenary that is looking for that next extra 5 or 10%, but they really want to build careers and want to be in the tech industry. So we believe it's just it's a great community solution for economic development and for equity, and inclusion, and serves a business need as well. Clearly serves a business need. Will lower the cost of acquisition of a talent in technology.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. That's the future of work are these pools of talent that most companies never even thought to look into before. But now there's no choice. And to Nicole, to your point, like that we can get them to a point, from a training perspective really quickly to make an impact in that organization. Oh, and by the way, they're going to be loyal because that's the underrepresented groups. I think of people with disabilities, they're very loyal employees, right? They don't want to jump around. Like they don't know the privilege of what it means to be able to jump around. They don't have that. And so they
Also,
are
nobody
very
jumps
loyal.
once they've found something that they actually like
Yes,
and that works for them and that it solves all the problems. Yeah,
that's
people
it.
don't jump when it's working.
Right.
Well, if I can, I want to go back to your first question, Nicole, which was Colorado inclusive economy, because this is the backdrop for why I felt so, I guess, personally and urgently this need to launch the inclusive economy movement, because I could see how my population was going to be and has been affected by the pandemic. And I wanted to call and invite and inspire and challenge CEOs in Colorado to rebuilding this time with racial equity, diversity, and inclusion as a goal and not as an afterthought.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that you both know even better than I how long the diversity, efforts have been going on in corporate America. I mean, at least 25 years.
Yeah.
And why we've made so little progress. Well, the reasons are myriad, and we can get into a super long discussion about that. But one of the reasons is that, equity, inclusion, and belonging have not been of strategic importance to companies historically.
Mm-hmm.
And notably missing in the whole effort has been CEOs and leadership. And I believe that is a huge opportunity. And also, I believe that it's the moral imperative of today. It's what CEOs need to be about. We need to be about building a community that works for all. And so that's why I launched it, because I just had a real longing for the community that we've been talking about for a long time, but we haven't achieved it. And it's because we haven't been focused as leaders in the community. We haven't been focused to putting our shoulders to the stone and pushing this rock up the hill together. And so the Colorado Inclusive Economy movement is a movement of design, intent, and action towards building more multicultural, diverse workforces of inclusion and belonging, especially for people of color. And as we build and transform our workforces, then with our individual actions, we are going to, as a movement, collectively make this the most inclusive economy in the nation. And so that's my boil the ocean pitch, which is that we've been talking about sharing opportunity and prosperity for a long time, but it's just been a lot of talk. There have been too many cosmetic pledges and empty platitudes, and even in the even with the murder of George Floyd and the other just the huge outcry against racial inequity last year. There were a lot of sort of pledges, or cosmetic pledges, I'll call it, but ours is a movement of accountability. And so we're asking our CEOs to not only get serious about personal transformation, about corporate transformation, but also to really get serious by reporting your numbers. Let's report our results. And it doesn't matter if you're not a diverse organization at all. I call that blue ocean. That's a lot of opportunity for us to rebuild with racial equity and diversity and inclusion as our outcome, as our desired outcome. So we have a huge opportunity here as we rebuild after the pandemic. And, I hope we don't waste it.
It sounds, Helen, like you've taken so Activate Workforce Solution, it hits the individual, hits the worker, and upskills the worker in using that word broadly. And it sounds like Colorado Inclusive Economy does the same thing for the employer. In some ways, upskills the employer in a broad sense to say, hey, join us, meet in the middle. We can solve all of our problems together. We just really need to think about this differently. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I'd say that's a great way of looking at it. What I'm doing is I'm working with one-off employers to help my individuals get hired on a one-off basis. But what I really, really wanted to do in launching the movement um, is to change the ecosystem, to make it
Mhm.
so that persistent inequity and poverty is not the reality for so many Americans and for so many Coloradans. And so what I really wanted to do was just level set and say, okay, let's just have a hugely transformative experience together, not just with our individuals that we're activating, but with the companies that we are engaging with and that we're challenging, inspiring, and equipping to build more inviting and inclusive workforces. And so you're right, we are equipping and activating employers and CEOs with a very, very robust learning journey, which Nicole, you've helped us build. But we are helping our employers build more multicultural, diverse organizations from the top down, the bottom up, and from the inside out.
Mm. I love it. Yeah,
Mic
I mean
drop.
yeah, right. I mean, we don't.
That was your mic drop moment there, Helen.
It was great. It was great. Well, Helen, thank you. This was a really fascinating conversation. I think there's just so many cool things, and you've got this 2-for-1 out. 2-for-1. It seems like push that you're doing from, and I like actionable, right? Like it's all super actionable. To your point, and to your point about sort of those cosmetic, or I forget the word you used, but for all the the performative, I use the word performative things and pledges and initiatives that have been going on for a couple decades now, that we're still in the same place. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we get beyond that? So yeah, thank you for your efforts. Thank you for the time today. It was just a great conversation.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Nicole, thank you as always. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. It's been a while.
It's been a while. And thank you all for checking out A Higher Future. We'll have the link down below, but please listen, please share, and we'll check you next time.